and gentlemen, welcome to Air Cargo India and Transport Logistic India's Thought Leadership Series. Today, we have with us someone who is shaping the way India thinks about end-to-end logistics. Girija Shanker, Chief Product Officer, Logistics and Services at Maersk for India and South Asia. Girija, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you manage an incredibly wide canvas. CFS, 4PL, warehousing, it's the full stack. So let's jump right in. And I want to ask you that with the manufacturing in India spreading across clusters, consumerism booming from metros to tier 2, tier 3 towns and villages also, according to you, where is the gap and what needs to be covered?
I think the most important thing for India is to drive the manufacturing competitiveness. And that's something that the government has recognized, and there's a tremendous amount of uplift that is happening in the underlying logistics infrastructure. But we're still not there where it comes to, let's say, some of the Western countries and some of the Far East countries where the cost of logistics is significantly lesser, the predictability of logistics is significantly better. And I think it is a great opportunity for India to actually make that shift from being a subscale or a medium scale player with somewhat volatile logistics landscape to be truly world class. And that will drive the overall competitiveness from a manufacturing perspective and will drive the exports growth for the country as well. So a couple of things very, very quickly, right? One is, it is super important to move from a point-to-point logistics network to a more hub and spoke network, which is what government has been trying to work towards. So, and as clusters are coming up in the right geography, it will enable those manufacturers to actually make use of those underlying infrastructure and drive the necessary uplift. Secondly, people tend to look at logistics in isolation, and I would encourage all of our manufacturing colleagues and customers to start looking at it a bit more holistically, looking at supply chain as an involved integrated subject. So if there is a possibility of optimizing supply chain, let's say optimizing your inventory holding cost, but that may entail a little bit different logistics network, that is probably what they should look at. Third is, and COVID has taught us incredibly, and we did our business summit recently where the theme was resilience, and I think it came out very clearly in our conversation is that resilience does not mean just having one more leg to your supply chain or one more additional vendor. It is the inherent ability of organizations to have an agile and flexible supply chain that can deal with both known unknowns as well as unknown unknowns.
You spent years crafting these large integrated deals where digitalization is being assimilated, integrated with E2E logistics. So when shippers come to you today, what are they looking for in terms of deep outsourcing?
So at Maersk, our core philosophy is that we would like to be an integrator of logistics, end-to-end logistics, or integrator of supply chain, so as to speak. The premise being very simple is most of the customers, when we talk to them, they struggle with handoffs. They struggle with managing their customs with somebody, their transportation with someone, their CFS with somebody else, their shipping with somebody, their emergency shipment via air with somebody else, and so on and so forth, right? And I think it's incredibly helpful for those organizations to start looking at ways and means in which those handoffs are minimized. They're able to look at the cost of not just the point-to-point transaction, but the overall cost of supply chain, what in my past life we used to call TCO, as the total cost of ownership. So what is my total cost of ownership of taking, let's say, goods from my factory all the way to my customer's factory or warehouse, including all the additional elements that I may have, which could be hidden cost, etc. My firm belief is supply chain has this tremendous iceberg effect, wherein what you see as direct cost or visible cost is not fully is not something that fully accounts for the actual cost that the organization incurs. Like for example, if you could have, let's say, your shipping leg and your, let's say, your upstream first mile as with different players, and you end up missing your vessel connection, you are likely to end up having delayed shipment, which could lead to penalties, which could lead to additional inventory holding costs, and so on and so forth. And it therefore becomes incredibly important to have an ability to manage this seamlessly. Digitalization is important as well, because if unless you are integrated, your ability to actually create a digital backbone, having a digital twin, becomes very, very difficult. You end up having 5 dashboards that don't talk to each other. So not everybody needs an integrated end-to-end logistics or a supply chain service or an outsourcing model. But I think organizations that are looking to integrate and support global customers would find tremendous value in an integrated offering where right from their origin point to all the way to the destination, including underlying enabling services, they are able to get that from a single partner in a manner where some of the handoffs, the underlying risks, etc., are managed a lot more seamlessly as compared to what they would do on their own.
We talk a lot about visibility, but the on-ground reality is a bit different. It's quite uneven. So where do you think are the biggest data gaps, and what is the smartest way to fulfill them?
So I think visibility definitely is an issue and is rightly called out. But I think more important than visibility is also what do you do with data, right? So we have a saying, right? It's data, insight, and action. Just raw data doesn't take you anywhere. So let me talk about the data part. I think the key part is, as we were discussing a bit earlier, if you are able to have a seamless view of your supply chain, right, and that requires your ability to actually look at it holistically, then the data and your dashboard becomes a lot more seamless as well. If you end up working with multiple service partners, if you end up looking at your business itself in a disaggregated way, it becomes therefore difficult for you to manage. So one, your taxonomy has to be consistent, your data flow has to be consistent, you look at it holistically, your partners will look at it holistically, and then you can see a seamless view. That's on the data. Now, like I said, the more important thing is, okay, now you know where data is, you have a seamless view. What do you do with that data? How does it actually helps you? So unless you have an underlying system of managing that data, taking the right actions, having a decision support system, having an organizational setup to, let's say, address, let's say if data tells you that your shipment is going to get delayed, okay, so what? What do you do with that information? How do you act on it? What kind of a mechanics you have on the back end with your partners, with your customers to address that insight that the data is throwing in is what it boils down to. And therefore, my recommendation to everybody who looks at data in isolation is to not do that, but look at data as the means to the end, and incorporate that into the operating design of the organization so that you actually are able to make use of that data and insight into doing what the need for that data is, right? So for example, one of the things we used to do from, let's say, in some of the shipments that we used to manage is get a visibility on what is likely to fail rather than something that has failed. And if something is likely to fail because some particular KPI is not being met, or you see a particular trigger, you are able to use some of the historical patterns, machine learning and whatnot, then you are able to take some possibly either a corrective action, you can move an emergency shipment, you can alert your customer, and so forth, that look, I am able to act on something 8 hours before it is likely to happen, and therefore I get a lead time of 8 hours to actually address that issue as compared to what would be the other case. And if you are able to do that on a consistent basis, you'd realize that your supply chain becomes far more predictable because you are able to address, let's say, 90% of the known unknowns at least beforehand.
Can this be implemented for the medium companies, for not the small companies, but for the medium companies? Is this implementable?
See, the good thing with most of our underlying data stacks is, right, for example, if you have ULIP, right, you can actually get the data practically free of cost. You just have to hook up to ULIP network. So the cost is not an issue. It's how well your underlying stack is designed, how well you connect up to the data stacks, and like I said, how holistically you look at your own supply chain. Because if you don't look at supply chain holistically, you will end up getting data. You'll find that the data doesn't match with each other, and then your ability to make sense of that data itself will become a challenge. So that's the key part of mine.
From your decades of experience, you've seen the vast platforms that are there to help logistics companies, to help the logistics industry grow. And from your perspective, a neutral platform like Transport Logistics India, Air Cargo India, how do you think they would help in unlocking India's multimodal aspirations to make them better coordinated and better collaborations in the industry?
No, look, it's a fantastic platform, and I think we're very grateful for you guys to bring it together, get various voices of the industry come together. This is a fast-paced industry. I think every year I look at the underlying landscape, I get amazed by what has changed in just, let's say, 12 months or even 6 months at times. Therefore, our ability to engage and understand what's happening in a broader ecosystem, sometimes outside our own industry, sometimes outside, from a policy perspective or from the technology standpoint, it gives a tremendous amount of insights of what's happening and what's changing. And if we are able to get that clarity and able to, if you will, share the best practices, it allows everybody who's involved to adopt and, in a way, push the envelope on what is the art of possible. So that's I think a critical thing. Secondly, it also allows us to uplift the profile from an India perspective, make sure that it is what's being done, good things that are being done in India are visible to people outside the geography. There are a lot of international visitors that are likely to come, and in a way it also gets the reality check, because you would find invariably that a lot of people outside of India tend to have a dated view of what India looks like, right? I was talking to somebody else, right, and we were talking about the transit times in India as compared to past, and in just 5 years, and you'd see it in your personal life as well, if you were to go from, let's say, Delhi to Mumbai, the transit time has significantly come down. So it allows for in a way, get down to being up to speed on where the current state of Indian logistics backbone is.
If you personally, if you had to change one thing to take the industry forward, what would you think of implementing that would make the biggest change?
I think and it depends on, obviously, industry to industry. So I can talk from a logistics industry perspective. The user industries obviously have their own views. I think we've got to invest ahead. Most of the logistics infrastructure and investments tend to be with a relatively short window in mind, let's say at best 3 year or 5 year down the line. And that invariably makes it both from a technology perspective as well as a cost to serve perspective suboptimal. And it's incumbent on the players in the market to actually look at least 10 years, if not 20, and see what does the market look like? What is my landscape? Am I really sizing for it, or am I, have this perennial situation that by the time I build, I'm running out of capacity? And that's, I think, is an Indian mindset that we probably have to get out of it and start thinking a little bit far out, because my views, like I said, every 6 month landscape is changing, and I think we will surprise ourselves on the upside.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, from Girija Shanker himself. Plan for the future, start implementing today to make an actual difference. Thank you so much for your time today, Girija.
Thank you so much.